Science claims that a human is just a random collection of molecules, that after death, emptiness and nothingness await us, that the soul is a beautiful fairy tale for weak minds. But one scientist proved in the lab that all of this is a lie. Pyotr Goryayev openly declared the immortality of the soul and the power of prayer, and he documented it all in the language of physics and genetics. Today we'll learn about 5 major discoveries by Goryayev that turned our understanding of God, the soul and humanity upside down. The 5th discovery stunned even priests because it matched exactly what's written in the sacred books of all world religions. But first, a story that'll send chills down your spine. 1985, Moscow, the Institute of Physical and Technical Problems at the USSR Academy of Sciences. In a country where science on the power of words was under an unofficial ban, young scientist Pyotr Goryayev was conducting routine experiments with DNA molecules. He'd irradiate them with a laser and capture the scattering spectra. Ordinary scientific work. Nothing special. But one day, a lab assistant mistakenly turned on the device, forgetting to insert the sample tube. The chamber is empty. No DNA inside at all. And then the impossible happens. The instruments show that the DNA is still there. In a completely empty chamber, the sensors detect radiation as if the molecule hadn't disappeared anywhere. Goryayev doesn't believe his eyes, rechecks the equipment, invites colleagues, but the result doesn't change. The empty chamber emits waves as if it contains living tissue. This discovery should have turned science on its head, but instead of recognition, Goryayev got fired. As he said later, when a young employee tries to do something of their own, they're either forced to work for the boss or fired. That's what they did to me. However, Goryayev didn't give up. He devoted the next 35 years to research that led him to conclusions completely contradicting the materialistic view of the world. He wrote books like Wave Genome, Wave Genetic Code, and pay attention to the title Code of God. A scientist who started as a classic biologist in the atheistic USSR came to a scientific justification for the existence of the Creator. On November 17, 2020, in the midst of the global pandemic, Peter Petrovich passed away from a sudden heart attack at the age of 78. According to some reports, shortly before that, his name appeared in lists of nominees for the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. A man who studied the nature of life and death for 40 years, who developed methods of wave healing, died suddenly, not living to see his possible triumph. It could be a coincidence, but his discoveries remain, and now we'll learn about them, what materialistic science so desperately tried to hide. First discovery. God is not a fiction, but a real informational field permeating the universe. Materialistic science has claimed for centuries that the universe arose by chance, that life is the result of chaotic chemical reactions, that there's no intelligent design behind it all, and there can't be. But Goryayev discovered something that completely refutes this picture. Studying DNA, he realized he was dealing not just with a chemical molecule, but with something much more complex and mysterious. DNA turned out to be an informational wave structure that operates according to the laws of linguistics, holography, and quantum non-locality. Simply put, our genetic code is not dead chemistry, but a living text constantly exchanging information with something greater than itself. The scientist called it the universal informational field, an infinite intelligent ocean of information where the blueprints of all living things are stored. Imagine a gigantic invisible library where the program of every cell, every organism, every person who ever lived on Earth is recorded. Our DNA is constantly connected to this library and downloads instructions from it to maintain life, just like a smartphone connected to the internet getting updates. The scientist described it in scientific language, but essentially he was talking about what believers have always called God, the Creator, the higher mind. The difference is only in terminology. Religion speaks of God. Goryayev spoke of the informational field. But it's about the same thing, an intelligent force that stands behind the entire creation and supports the life of every being. This was the first discovery, but it already called into question all of materialistic science. Further, even more astonishing facts, because Goryayev found scientific confirmation for one of the most famous phrases from Holy Scripture. Second discovery. The biblical phrase, "In the beginning was the Word," turned out to be a literal physical truth. Remember these lines. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. For millennia, people perceived this as a poetic metaphor, as a beautiful image unrelated to the real physics of the world. Materialists outright laughed at these words, calling them nonsense, but Goryayev proved that it's literal truth. He applied the most complex mathematical methods of linguistics to analyze the human genome and discovered an astonishing thing. The structure of our DNA is completely identical to the structure of human speech. In the genetic code, there are its own nouns and verbs, its own cases and grammar rules, its own laws for constructing sentences and texts. Our DNA is a real language, just recorded not with letters, but with nucleotides. Goryayev called a person a readable textual structure. We are the living embodied word. The Creator didn't build us from bricks of matter like a mason builds a house. He created us like a poet writes a poem. The universe is a sounding text, and each of us is part of this great narrative. But that's not all. Goryayev discovered that DNA works on the principle of a hologram. In each of our cells, the full blueprint is encrypted not only for the body, but for the entire universe. All the power of the Creator, all the information of creation lives in us. Sacred texts knew this truth long before genetics appeared. Goryayev simply translated it into the language of science. And this means something very important. If we are created by the Word, then our words should possess creative power. That's exactly what the scientist proved in his next experiment. And here's where things get hair-raising. Third discovery. Our words are a real physical force, capable of healing and destroying at the molecular level. All world religions taught that the word has power. Prayer heals, a curse destroys, a blessing protects. But materialistic science rejected this as superstition. Words are just air vibrations, they said. They can't influence matter. It's physically impossible. Goryayev proved it is possible. And not just possible, but happening every second of our lives. He conducted an experiment that should have exploded the scientific world. He took plant seeds completely killed by a lethal dose of radiation. Their DNA was turned to dust, the genetic code destroyed to the foundation. According to all laws of biology, these seeds were dead forever. No force could resurrect them. Then the scientist began to affect these dead seeds with a laser modulated by human speech. He pronounced prayers, kind words, phrases filled with creative energy. And the impossible happened. The dead seeds came to life. The torn DNA chains began to restore themselves, as if an invisible intelligent force was sewing them according to the original blueprint. After some time, the seeds sprouted and produced healthy plants. But Goryayev also conducted the reverse experiment, the results of which horrified even him. He took healthy human DNA and began to affect it with profanity, curses, the rudest words he knew. Through the microscope, a creepy picture opened up. Chromosomes began to twist, deform, tear apart. The scientist measured the damage and got a figure that takes your breath away. One curse inflicted damage on DNA equivalent to irradiation of 30,000 Roentgens. For comparison, the lethal dose of radiation for a human is 400 Roentgens. This means that one rude word strikes our cells 75 times stronger than lethal irradiation. This is not a metaphor, nor an exaggeration, nor esotericism. This is physical reality measured by instruments. Now imagine how many times a day we pronounce aloud or mentally destructive phrases. I'm tired. Nothing will work out for me. This is unbearable. I won't hold out. Each such phrase is a strike to our DNA with the force of 30,000 Roentgens. Multiply by the number of days, months, years, and it becomes clear where diseases come from that doctors call inexplicable and incurable. But the reverse is also true. When we pray, when we say kind words to ourselves and others, when we bless instead of cursing, we launch the healing process at the molecular level. Prayer works not because somewhere far in the heavens someone hears our words. Prayer works because it is the most powerful wave of healing that directly affects our genetic code. Religions have known this for millennia. Goryayev simply explained the mechanism, but that's just the beginning. The next discovery explains why prayer for another person reaches them even across thousands of kilometers. Fourth discovery. We are all connected through the informational field, and prayer for another really works. All religions teach us to pray for each other. Goryayev described cases that official medicine would call maternal instinct or just coincidence. A mother was 3,000 kilometers from her adult son. In one moment, she suddenly felt acute, unbearable pain, and precisely in the place on the body where her son at that very second received an injury in a car accident. She couldn't know about it physically. No one called her. She didn't see any news, but she felt it. Goryayev explained this phenomenon from the point of view of quantum physics. Mother and son were connected through a common genetic network, tuned to one frequency, like two walkie-talkies. The information was transmitted instantly through that very universal informational field in which distances do not exist. There are no meters and kilometers there, only connection. This explains a multitude of phenomena that science is accustomed to denying or ignoring. Why do twins feel each other's pain while in different countries? Why does a mother wake up in the middle of the night at the moment when her child is unwell? Why do people sometimes know that something happened to their loved one even before they receive the news? All this is reading information from a single field to which we are all connected. And here's what this means in practice. When we pray for a person on the other end of the planet, our wave reaches them instantly. Prayer is not just a comforting ritual. It is a real transmission of healing information through the informational field. Religions have always known this and taught us to pray for each other. Goryayev gave this a scientific explanation. But there is also a flip side. When we get angry, hate, envy, we pollute the field around us. And this affects everyone connected to us, especially children, because their connection to the field is stronger and they are more vulnerable to wave influences. It would seem that now the picture is complete, but further is the most stunning discovery of Goryayev, which shocked even priests, a discovery connected with a number that humanity has known for thousands of years. Fifth discovery. The soul exists and science has recorded its trace for exactly 40 days. Remember that experiment from 1985, where it all began. The empty chamber from which the DNA was removed. But the instruments continued to detect radiation as if the molecule hadn't gone anywhere. Goryayev not only recorded this phenomenon, he measured how long this phantom effect lasts. He repeated the experiment hundreds of times, changed equipment, invited independent experts, and each time got the same result. The DNA phantom existed for exactly 40 days. Not 41, exactly 40. After this period, the radiation stopped, the trace disappeared. Stop for a second and think about this number. 40 days is a period that runs like a red thread through all world religions. For millennia, people of different cultures and beliefs, without colluding, named the same number. And here, a scientist in a Soviet laboratory with the help of a laser and spectrometer gets the same number, 40 days. Goryayev himself said about it, "It seems that in 40 days, the phantom does not die, but leaves the device or goes beyond its resolving power. According to my ideas, this phantom is eternal like the human soul." Do you understand what this means? Materialistic science has insisted for decades that the soul does not exist, that consciousness is just a byproduct of chemical reactions in the brain, that after the death of the body, nothing remains of us. Goryayev experimentally showed that information does not disappear after the destruction of the material carrier. Something continues to exist, radiate, be present in space. Our body is a temporary shell, a spacesuit for traveling through the material world. But our true essence is a waveform, an informational cluster, what religions call the soul. When the heart stops, this information does not disappear into nowhere. It changes the vibration frequency and returns to that very infinite ocean of consciousness from which it came, preserving everything: memory, experience, love. Goryayev did not refute religion. He gave it scientific confirmation. Sacred texts knew the truth thousands of years ago, and science is only now beginning to understand it. But if all this is true, why aren't they shouting about it on every corner? Why aren't Goryayev's discoveries taught in universities? Why was he declared a pseudo-scientist and charlatan? The answer is simple and sad. Too many benefit from us considering ourselves a random set of molecules without soul and meaning. The pharmaceutical industry earns $4 trillion a year. If people learn that they can influence their health with the power of words and prayer, the demand for medicine will drop sharply. Goryayev conducted experiments with rats sick with a severe form of diabetes. He irradiated them with wave information from healthy cells, and their pancreas restored the function of insulin production without a single pill, without a single injection. Imagine what threat this poses to insulin manufacturers. But it's not just about money. A person who knows about their connection with the Creator, who understands the power of their word, who believes in the immortality of their soul, this is a free person. It's impossible to manipulate them through fear of death, through a sense of meaninglessness of existence, through a feeling of their own insignificance. Such a person is dangerous to any control system. That's why Goryayev's discoveries were hushed up. His works were not published in leading journals. He himself was called a charlatan, but the information has already gone out into the world. It's impossible to destroy it, and now we know what he knew. And now let's move on to practice. Here are specific actions that can be applied today based on Goryayev's discoveries. First, pray consciously. Prayer is not just a ritual, it's a real wave that affects the informational field and our DNA. It doesn't matter what religion we follow, sincerity and depth of feeling are important. Pray with the awareness that words physically reach the goal, and pray for loved ones. The signal reaches them instantly, no matter what distance they are at. Second, cleanse your speech from destroyer words. Remember the figure 30,000 Roentgens. Every rude word, every curse inflicts such a blow on our cells. Completely remove profanity from life, especially addressed to children. Their DNA is especially receptive. Replace phrases, "I'm tired, I'm sick, this is unbearable," with "I'm restoring strength, my body is healing, I'll cope." Third, start the morning with a blessing. Every morning, pronounce aloud words of gratitude to the Creator and kind words to yourself. Stand in front of the mirror, look yourself in the eyes and say, "I am a creation of God. His power lives in me, I am healthy, I am full of energy, I am blessed." This is not self-suggestion. This is direct impact on the genetic code through a sound wave. Fourth, free yourself from the fear of death. Goryayev proved what sacred texts have said for millennia. The soul does not die. Information about us does not disappear. Fear of death is the most powerful destructive program that literally kills our cells. People who do not fear death, perceiving it as a natural transition, live significantly longer. Not because they are brave, but because there is no fear program in their DNA. Fifth, realize your connection with the Creator. We are not a random set of molecules that arose as a result of chaos. We are the living Word, part of the great text of the universe. In each of our cells is recorded the blueprint of the Creator. Act from this awareness with dignity, with gratitude, with understanding of the responsibility for every spoken word. For centuries, we've been told that science and faith are incompatible, that you have to choose between reason and spirituality. Pyotr Goryayev showed that this is a false choice. Science and faith speak of the same thing, just in different languages. In the beginning was the Word, turned out to be the literal truth about the structure of DNA. The soul is immortal turned out to be a measurable effect of a sound wave on the genetic code. Prayer heals turned out to be a measurable effect of a sound wave on the genetic code. We are all connected turned out to be quantum non-locality, the transmission of information through a single field. Materialistic science tried to convince us that we are a meaningless accident in a cold universe. Goryayev proved the opposite. We are children of the Creator, carrying His code within us, capable of creating with the Word, and connected to each other by invisible threads of love. Friends, if Pyotr Goryayev's discoveries resonated with you, leave any comment. Feedback is very important to us. We appreciate that you express your opinion sincerely and share the video with friends. Tell us, Have you ever felt the power of prayer in your life? Have you noticed a connection with loved ones at a distance? Your story can become support for those who are now doubting and seeking answers. And in the next video, we'll talk about other scientists who found evidence of spiritual reality. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Remember, we are the living word of the Creator, and this word has power. Use it for good, or